All right, so I'm shocked. And by you clicking on this video or this podcast, you are too, and you want to know more. And so do I. So this is Automotive Repair News today. Thanks for being here. I'm Braxton. He's Pras from Yahoo Finance. Pras, thanks for joining.
Hey man, how you doing?
So, what are we shocked about? Nissan, Honda, they were going to merge, and now they're not. So first of all, I'll say this, Praz, and I'll give it to you. But when I first saw the news, I was like, oh, wow, two big automotive powers are going to join here. And I was like, wow, this could be a neat, interesting move for the industry. And then the longer it took to get it done, the more skepticism there became around the move. And then suddenly it's not going to happen. They nixed it. Nissan and Honda are not going to merge. So first, you tell me your initial reaction to the merger, and then now your post reaction to it's not going to happen.
So I think it was about 2 months ago when this was announced, and it really shocked me seeing these two giant Japanese icons, Honda and Nissan, joining forces. I think a lot of people in my office were saying, "Oh, that's interesting. That's a big deal." I'm like, "No, this is a major deal. This is as if Ford and GM merged, two very different companies, different cultures coming together to take on the automotive world where you need size and scale, the ability to share costs to survive, I guess, is what the thinking." But, we can get into this. Over time, we heard a drip of bad news about how this merger wasn't going well for various reasons. Then finally, we had them actually announce, the two boards announced we're going to not do this. We're going to end our merger discussions. And then by doing that, by cooperatively doing that, there's no breakup fee, right? So they're able to kind of walk away. They did say they would sort of partner on some technologies like EV stuff, but nothing compared to an actual merger.
So the reporting that I heard, you've been following this story closer than I have, but it was Nissan didn't want to be a subsidiary of Honda. And that's what I've been told is why this happened. Is there more to that, or is that simply bottom line? They wanted more control.
I think what was happening was that Honda was seeing that Nissan was in pretty bad shape. And so a couple of things. One, they didn't think that Nissan was doing enough cost cutting, is my understanding from various reporting out of Japan. They wanted that to be a bit more extreme, and it wasn't happening as fast or as deep as they would have liked. The second thing is that Honda executives are concerned that a merged company will be so large that it couldn't actually be nimble and react to the market, react to the global automotive market. And even Honda's CEO, global CEO, said that they thought that this merger wouldn't create a speedy enough company that could react that way. And finally, what you said also, apparently when things were breaking down, Honda tried one last ditch way to make it work and said, "Hey, Nissan, you should be our subsidiary and we'll be the corporate owner." And then that was not tenable for them. Nissan was saying, "Hey, we need to be together and have a holding company that would show us as both equals." I think Nissan is a little sore from the Renault partnership, where Renault is considered the leading partner there and had a very kind of dominant sort of position over them. They did not want that to happen again. So I think that's why that was sort of the way from the exit was, hey, Honda was saying, "Be our subsidiary," and Nissan said, "We can't do that."
So who broke up with who?
It sounds like to me, because Nissan was pretty desperate, right? They were seemingly in bad shape. They cut their profit forecasts again. They really sort of just kind of fell off the cliff in terms of how bad the China business was. Business in the U.S. not so strong, doing okay, but not so good, or not so great. And then Honda is chugging away, right? They're doing just fine in the U.S. Also in their home market. And I think what happened was that Nissan was like, "We need to make this happen." And for only way Honda could get out of it was saying, "Hey, you're going to be our subsidiary." And that was the one part where Nissan couldn't agree to that one condition. And then that's my understanding as to why it broke apart. Nissan really needs a partner, is what's happening now.
So it was almost like the boyfriend didn't really want to break up with the girlfriend. And so he was like, "Hey, honey, you've got a couple of issues," and made it kind of clear. So she ended up breaking up with him, but he wanted to break up with her first.
Right. Almost saying, "Hey, the boyfriend saying, 'Hey, I want to date other people. We'll still be together.'" And then the girlfriend said, "No, that's not happening." So maybe that's what happened. That's how we can analyze it. But you're absolutely right. It seems to be that Honda got a little bit of cold feet because of just how deep the problems were, and they created a way to get out of it. This is just my speculation, my thoughts based on the reporting that we're seeing. that how this thing unraveled so quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. So obviously, the next question is what's next, and we'll talk about each Honda and Nissan. But I think the bigger deal is what happens for Nissan because, like you said, the past couple of quarters, Nissan's been going way down, and so I mean they could really be in trouble here. What do you think is next for them?
I think a lot of people, Braxton outside the industry, were surprised how bad Nissan, what the shape that they had gone into. Right? What do you mean they're in trouble? I see Nissans on sale. I see the cars everywhere. What's going on? Well, it turns out a lot of their products are kind of a little long in the tooth. Issues selling those older products, and there's some new Nissan Kicks, new Muranos out, but it's not maybe doing enough to move the needle. And a lot of deterioration in China was the big problem. Is my understanding for Nissan is that they lost a lot of business there, and that was a big kind of driver for them. So that's a problem. So what happens next is aside from the fact that they're working with Honda on a partnership for EV and technologies sharing, they need another big partner, a cash infusion, something like that. It turns out that there aren't many big partners left that would like to merge Nissan, right? There's just not that many. It's not an attractive partner. It may be cultural issues with working with a Japanese company. Who knows? So now they're looking at do we sell a stake? And that's where potentially Foxconn, which is this Taiwanese device maker that makes iPhones and other things like that, they got into the EV game. They want to make some EVs, and they thought, hey, Nissan has 40 something factories. Why don't we have them use their excess capacity? So there might be a deal there. It's not going to be a merger. It sounds like it's going to be a sort of a stake will be bought by Foxconn, give them some cash. Who knows what else to kind of make it happen so they can use their Nissan's excess capacity and give them some capital to work with. And then the last thing I heard was that is Bloomberg reporting that KKR, which is this big private equity concern, is kicking the tires, so to speak, of Nissan, looking to possibly make an investment there. And apparently KKR has a big Asian business, and they've done quite well with investing in Japanese and Asian companies. So that's another possibility. But there's no big white knight sort of sitting around like a Hyundai or something like that that's going to come in and swoop in and take Nissan. This just doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
So when this first came out, it was people were saying Honda, Nissan trying to merge to compete with Toyota. That was the big deal. And so, I mean, Honda is not in the shape of Nissan. Honda is going to be okay. Competing with Toyota is just not really possible. It's just hard to do. They're just Toyota. Um, but so, what do you think is next for Honda? What does this mean for them?
So at the time, when this merger was announced, so it's VW and Honda are the top. I'm sorry, VW and Toyota are the top two by unit sales, right, and globally, right. A merger of Honda and Nissan would have created the third biggest by unit sales by size, which would be you have the ability and scale to compete with Toyota. Right now, Honda and Nissan are like 8 and 9, right? Like they're big, but they're not major players. They're not big as like Hyundai, Kia, VW, not even as big as GM, right? So it's going to be a struggle for them to compete in a world now where we're seeing, however you feel about it, new powertrain technologies coming. You got to keep developing ICE technology. It's going to cost a lot of money to not only build these powertrains, but also the breadth of products that people want. You talk about those synergies of Honda and Nissan. Nissan has all these body-on-frame trucks that Honda could use, right? Meanwhile, Honda has all these hybrid type technology and very popular model sets that could work in Nissan's favor too. So you had a good union there potentially. And I spoke to a guy named Sam Fiorani who works for Auto Forecast Solutions, a manufacturing expert. And he said that's where the match is, right? So it's Nissan's body-on-frame trucks and pickups, and then Honda with those great CUVs and sedans. They could just kind of merge together, have a great portfolio. So that not happening. What's going to happen to Honda? They had a partnership with GM for EVs, and that sort of went away. Are they going to kind of strike a deal with someone else to work on some of these technologies? I think that's the future for them. Again, I don't think they're going to be merging with anyone anytime soon.
Hmm. So, big picture, what do you think this means for the industry as a whole?
Hmm. It's tough because first thing that comes to mind is the fact that are we going to have a shakeout, right? Are we going to have a major automaker potentially not be around, not because of a global crisis, but because it's just untenable, because we haven't even talked about the big sort of gorilla in the room, and that's Chinese automakers, right? They are growing leaps and bounds in their home market, making cars that are cheap and actually, from what I hear, pretty good. They've been kept out of our market. They're sort of coming into Europe and they're taking some share there. So the question is, if they ever come to the U.S., what's going to happen then? Is going to be a big shakeout. Does the Nissan no longer survive? I don't think so. I think they'll figure it out. They're too big and too important in Japan. I don't think the Japanese government would allow that. But the writing's clearly on the wall, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, you sort of mentioned things coming to the US, and the other question is what about tariffs? And, Trump has put a lot of these tariffs on, and I wonder if that even played a little bit of a role in this merger not happening.
Perhaps I didn't even think about that. Really, my understanding is Nissan has a huge plant in Tennessee where they make a lot of cars in the U.S. market, but then they also have plants in Mexico,
Yeah,
and
big time,
that's a
right?
concern. So does Toyota. That's a concern. I'm not. I don't. I'm not sure about Honda. Correct me on this, but I don't think they have a big Mexican presence. But I'm not positive. So maybe they didn't want that exposure to countries that Trump is not targeting. Canada and Mexico in particular, border countries. Maybe that was played a part in it. You're absolutely right. That could have played a role in why this may have unraveled.
Yeah. What about automotive repair? So this is, automotive repair news today, and obviously things that affect automotive and making vehicles certainly affects automotive repair. And a lot of times, auto repair will see the trickle down effect. So things that happen with Nissan and Honda today, auto repair may not see it for a couple of years because of warranties and the dealership, all that kind of stuff. But what these kind of moves are big deals, and a lot of it had to do with EV and hybrid and ICE. You talked about it, and so auto repair is trying to figure out how they fit into all that mess. Right to repair is happening. There's a lot of issues going on right now in automotive and automotive repair. So, what do you think it means for the repair industry?
You know, you've probably even seen this in industry with just rising costs of parts and labor are increasing repair costs overall. And potentially big picture, if you would have had two of these big companies merged together, they would have been able to share parts technology, maybe share costs in developing these parts, and maybe that would bring down some of those costs of repairs. And then also, if you have two big companies ordering a lot of parts, you can actually bring down costs of production of these parts, right? So maybe that we would have seen some synergy there, some cost cutting there from the parts point of view, helping out with the repair side of things. We just had consumer price index come out just a couple of days ago, and auto repair stuff still is ticking a bit higher. And I've been reading about it. Maybe you can and talk to me about this too. But the fact that because cars are getting so expensive, the parts are getting expensive, and then that combined with higher labor is giving people bigger repair bills, and that's in turn leading to bigger insurance premiums, right? So it's all this
Yeah,
big kind of vicious circle.
it all affects everything affects each other. It does. But the repair industry, within the industry, and automotive is really the same, but they're all saying it's recession proof. It's recession proof, and I mean I'm with them. People need transportation, um, and so far a lot of repair shops have done just really a lot of them have done very well through all the inflation. They've been able to maintain their car counts, and there is a little bit of a technician shortage right now. Trying to get pay up for technicians, but I mean, people got to fix their cars, and prices go up. People still need to eat, so they're going to buy food when groceries go up. Same thing for fixing your car; you have to get it repaired. So I mean, so far the inflation and the repair industry they've done just fine. But it is interesting. All this stuff does play together, like you said, and the big push for EVs. That's the repair industry's got to figure out how they're going to sift through that in the next decade. Right to repair is a big issue for this season, and so it's just there's a lot going on right now. And I've only just admittedly, Praz, you don't know me all that well, but I've only been in the repair industry for just over a year, and so my knowledge is growing daily. And so I'm not an expert, I would say, to this point yet, but it's just crazy. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like more is happening in the repair industry and the automotive industry in the past 6 months than there has been in the last 6 years. I don't know, but
No, I
it's
think
just wild.
I think you're absolutely right. I have a source out in California, a dealer. I'll name it. They believe he has it's Toyota and Ford is some of the brands that he works with, and he was telling me that there's the thought is that EVs don't need to be repaired that often, and they're less maintenance needed, and I asked, well, and that's the thought. And I said, how does that affect your business? And he said, actually, we're seeing the opposite. Yes, the cars generally don't need that much service, and they're pretty trouble free, but when they do come in, they need a lot of special parts. They need special, like you said, technicians.
It's expensive.
And that's what he said is the big problem is that we don't have that many technicians who work on EVs, and that causes delays in the repair bay.
Yeah.
These cars kind of sit there and they're not getting fixed. And what that means is that the car's sitting there, they're not getting the service center's not getting money for the repairs because they can't fix the car yet. The customer's upset because the car's sitting in the repair bay. So there's a lot of problems there. Whereas our traditional ICE powered cars, they know how to fix them pretty quickly. And that business is fine. It's just the EV stuff is they have to get up to speed because, and this dealer friend of mine is in California, and there's a lot of EVs there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah.
And they got to fix them, and it's becoming a problem, and that's inflating costs too.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is right, but I've heard some people say if the EV battery fails, that's a $15,000 repair.
Oh yeah. If it's not under warranty, yeah, for sure.
Crazy.
I mean, probably
it may not have to have as many, but the repairs are expensive.
I mean, the part itself could be 10 to 15 grand, so you're not including the cost of labor.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's not worth repairing. The car's not worth 15 grand or so. But even then, do you want to spend that much money to put a new battery, and then in 10 years it goes bad? I'm just saying, like, it's a tough repair to deal with when you're out of warranty.
Yeah, I think the next 10 years are going to be very telling for both industries. A lot of things are going to change. A lot of people are going to leave, and we'll see where things wind up. But next 10 years, it's very different from now.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me as working in the space, like covering the industry, it's actually good because there's so much happening. For me to write
there's
about.
lots to talk. There's lots to write about. That's for sure.
Yeah, for us, it's great. We get to kind of dig into it, and it's every day is different, and I think that's a great part of my job that I love so much. And talking to you about, for me, I'm not well versed in the automotive repair side. I just sort of see and I write about here and there. I'm more about the automakers, the OEMs, but the parts business is big business. And I spoke to Ford CEO Jim Farley a couple weeks ago talking about Ford Performance, and that performance parts business is huge, right? So everything kind of feeds into the racing, you have the enthusiast vehicles like Mustang and Bronco and Raptor, and then you have the parts, and then where are parts installed? Dealer installed parts, fantastic business, right? Warranty parts, everyone's happy, but someone's got to put the parts in. So it's all sort of part of the industry. It's like is this huge repair and parts and customizations.
What else? Anything else that we haven't talked about for the Honda and Nissan merger that you think needs to be brought up?
It's interesting because you mentioned Toyota earlier, and Toyota is not just Toyota, right? They have a relationship with Subaru and Mazda, right? They have their own kind of, I believe in Japan they call it the koretsu, right? Where it's a unspoken alliance where the industries support each other. And that's what I think might be the wild card here with Nissan is that, and we touched on it too, is I think that the Japanese government cannot allow Nissan to fail. So I personally believe that if it needs to be rescued, it will be rescued in some fashion, and it won't be popular, but they won't let Nissan go away. It's just too old and too important of a company in Japan. And what might happen is they might say, hey, Honda, you are going to merge with Nissan. And they might actually force one of these companies. I don't know. Maybe it's Mazda. I don't know.
Really? You think that might happen?
We're just having some fun here. I
can't. I don't know. You're the expert, but
it's not my original thought. I had heard of this from someone else that I don't want to quote, but the thinking was that because the Japanese government is so much ingrained in a lot of local corporate structure, right? They're part of the government's part of the whole country. Yeah. And they can have the power to do so, and they could compel a company to do so because they just say it's for the greater good. So I'm just throwing that out there as a wild card. It's something that I heard.
Yeah, something to watch
about Japan and how that works, but that's just what I've heard is that they already do these, these alliances that aren't necessarily codified in stone, right? but it's possible that Nissan, they're going to go away, but they might be reformed in some way.
Right. Wow.
We'll see.
Watch that. That's for
Yeah.
sure. That's something to keep an eye on.
I should start a conspiracy theory podcast, right? Maybe we should
You
do
may
that.
have. Yeah, you just started something there, Pras. Well,
That's right.
thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate being with you. Anytime, would love to come on and chat again.